Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. We're going to be looking at the new Russian tanks and planes in the game. There are a lot, and there's a lot of changes. But right now, you can see that we are driving out the 4M GAZ-AAA. Now, I really like the addition of this into the game. It's sitting at battle rating 1.0. So, we're trying to spray this Panzer II, and it looks like nothing's really happening. We're getting a few slight penetrations in some weak spots, but for the most part, not a whole lot's happening. So, but anyway, this is the 4M GAZ-AAA. Now, why do I like this? We already have one in the game already. We already have the 4M GAZ, but we have the one that's the 72K GAZ-AAA right here. Same truck. This one has a 25mm anti-aircraft gun on it. This one has 4 max 7.62mm machine guns with 1,000 rounds per gun. So, but what I think is pretty exciting is these are, well, let's look at the armor. First off, there's 15mm of wood and 1mm of steel. Actually, this one has been changed. That one is not. I think it's incorrect. I'm not really sure if the wood's supposed to be 15mm of thickness or not, but we've got 1mm of steel, so obviously things are subject to change. It's different since the last time I've checked it. So you can see there might be some debate as to which one it is, but you can see the components here. You've got your commander, the driver, and then the gunner back here manning the maximum MGs, and then your ammunition right there. But what's kind of cool about this truck is this same truck was used in a couple different ways. There's also obviously the 61K GAZ, which has a 37mm anti-aircraft gun, and then there's also the SU-12, which is a 76mm field gun placed on this truck. So we may see some of those some point in the future. But what I'm really interested in, I've always been interested in armored cars, right? And we have the Su-57, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and this is an armored half-track with a 57mm gun, and we've got the American 75mm M3 gun motor carriage here. But back to the Russian, since that's what we're covering, is this chassis, this kind of six-wheeled truck, is the GAZ AAA was also used for the BA-6 and the BA-10 armored cars. Now, the BA-6 has the same turret on top of it as the BT-5, so it's got a 45mm gun, also the same turret as older T-26 versions. And those would be great. Like, I mean, if we already have this truck and we already have the turret, all you got to do is armor this thing. And I think the maximum thickness it had on the BA-6s and BA-10s, but definitely the BA-10s, I think was 15mm. So you're going to have a fast armored car, relatively fast armored car with a decent 45mm gun on top of it, plus it's got the turret of, a tank. But it's kind of cool because those armored cars took place in the Spanish Civil War, the Battle of Kaclin Gol against the Japanese, and it fought in the Finnish Winter War, and it was used in the Eastern Front against the Germans. But the Finns captured a lot of the BA-6s and BA-10s and used them, so if there ever was Italy, Hungary, and other Axis minor nations kind of in their own tech tree, you could also see the BA-6s and BA-10s serving there as well, which would be kind of cool. But moving on, we have the Su-57, and taking a quick load at its armor, the thickest is 12.7mm, so those BA-10s that I was just talking about with 15mm would be kind of better armored than this, but it's got a very impressive gun, a 57mm gun. Now, it says that it's the M1 cannon, and the M1 cannon is actually an American-produced gun, which is based off a British 6-pounder. So, at first I thought it would be, kind of the same gun as the T-34-57, but that's definitely not the case. That thing has a 57mm ZIS-4. And this one is a ZIS-2. These tank guns are a lot better than the Su-57's 57mm gun. Let's take a look at it, actually. So we're going to go over armor penetrations, right? You've got the M86 round, and you can see all the penetrations. We're just going to go off no angling. So it's got 98 millimeters of penetration at 500 meters with the M86, which is a ballistic cap round. Then armor piercing, which is 112 millimeters. So it is superior. But so this one has better fragmentation because it's the ballistic cap shell. And fragmentation is basically shrapnel, which is more likely to hit crew members and hit critical components. So it's got better fragmentation, but less penetration. But you can see how it's pretty decent now when comparing that. So what do we've got? We're going to go off the 500 meter one, 98 millimeters and 112 millimeters. Now let's take a look at just the ZIS-30 because that one relatively easy to compare. This one is 91 millimeters and 87 millimeters, so it may be a little better than the ZIS-2, and it's definitely, I think it's definitely safe to say it's not going to be better than this gun. But let's check. That's actually kind of similar. So it's got great penetration for a tier 1 platform, but obviously rather weakly armored, and it has a very difficult. It's kind of here. We'll show you. Its angling, or the traverse of the gun on top, is limited, and since it's a half track, it's going to be kind of interesting to play. You basically have to face the enemy, right? So if I wanted to shoot that Panzer II right here, I would have to reverse like that, or I'd obviously have to go forward. But you can see how, and the traverse rate is slow. So while this thing can pick up speed pretty decently, it's going to be difficult to kind of use it with regard to, you know, the traverse of the gun and the kind of degrees at which are effective firing for this thing. But it is a really, really good gun. Even able to pen certain parts of this Panther at distance, which is pretty good. Not a whole lot of fragmentation, but tell you what, it's a great gun. The platform's also pretty cool, because the Su-57 was also called the T-48 by the Americans, which it was a Lend-Lease armored vehicle that the Americans produced for the Russians, and they gave it. So it's an M3 half-track, just like this one, and it's a 57mm gun that was American produced based off of 57mm British gun. So, but what's kind of cool about the M3 half-track is there's other versions of it, one of which has a 105mm howitzer on it. So if you like the big guns, we may see something like that in the future if armored half-tracks and armored cars do kind of find their way into War Thunder, which I sure hope they do, because I would like to see kind of more tier 1s, maybe even a tier 0, but I'll talk about that in another video, my idea for a tier 0. But tier 1 kind of specific battles, maybe Spanish Civil War, Cackling Gulf, Finnish Winter War, in very, very early, you know, World War II or late 1930s kinds of situations. But anyway, moving on, we're going to look at some of the other ones. We've got the T-34E STZ. Now this bad boy looks like it has 15 millimeters of spaced armor added to it. And it's got the same gun. You can see here it falls right in after the T-34 1942. So this one's got a battle rating of 3.7. The STZ also right now has a battle rating of 3.7. Same F-34 76mm gun on both of these. And overall, I believe it's the same number of statistics, you know, same paper stats. So I think that the only real difference, the STZ was a production, a factory, I believe. What is this? Is this new? Oh, it protects the top maybe against grenades, possibly? I don't know, I'll have to check actually. I did not notice this before. 16 millimeters, but these weird little 10 millimeter plates, or maybe it's just more detailed. No, that's definitely on top. Yeah. So it looks like it's got some spaced armor on the top where, you know, would be a hot spot to throw an anti-tank grenade. But yeah. But this 15 millimeters on the front is pretty huge when dealing with a T-34 from the front because they already have that 60-degree sloping. So let's take a look actually at the T-34-42. Customize. See if it's got those same plates. Yeah, it does. All right. So maybe that's new. It may. I haven't touched this tank in so long that maybe this isn't new at all. But it is kind of more detailed, and I do like the attention to detail that War Thunder's putting into the game. We'll be getting into that more later because there are some new models for Russian planes as well as cockpits, and I know you guys want to see those. There's a new IL-2 cockpit, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, let's look at this bad boy, which is the Su-122-54, which I think is basically going to be a T-95 and a mouse killer. This thing's gun is ridiculous. Well, let's take a look at it. So you've got heat rounds, which do 400 millimeters of penetration at all distances. Let's actually compare that real quick to the M103. Where are you at, Mr. M103? 380 millimeters. Yeah, it is superior to the M469 shell, the heat round that the M103 had. So I think what we're looking at is now the best penetration in the game in the Su-122-54. So let's go back and we'll look at kind of default rounds. You can see penetrations. If you want, pause it, take a closer look. Armor piercing, it's got 6 different shell choices, one of which is high explosive, which I almost rarely use. We've got an armor piercing discarding Sabo round. Is it Sabo, Sabot, Sabot? There's so many pronunciations. I have a penchant for mispronunciation. So this thing's got fantastic penetration, but this heat round can pen the T-95 from the front, and within 500 meters, this thing should be able to pen. The APDS can pen the T-95 from the front because with 305 millimeters of thickness at 0 degrees of angling or sloping, let's take a look. We're going to take a look at the Doom Turtle real quick to kind of show that off because there was a little bit of displeasure that right when the 95 comes in, it's going to be a little bit better than the mouse. It's going to be able to pen the mouse, and it can kind of turn faster than the mouse if what we saw in my, if you haven't checked it out, check out, there'll be a video, link to the video in the description below for the American tanks and planes. But I think what we're looking at is this is the new top dog, and it's Russian, so, but it is very, it's got a great gun, but it has very little armor relative to the mouse. It's got decent armor, don't get me wrong, but relatively it's got no armor compared to the mouse and T-95, but a better gun, so maybe that is the balancing point there. Only 80 millimeters of thickness on the side. It is tier 5, battle rating 8.0, so it will see the biggest and baddest. And at this tier, I mean, I kind of like the Tiger 2s and the M103s and the IS-4s are my personal choice, but everyone's got their own thing. So 100 millimeters thickness. Kind of, but it's got some tracks here and this little extra 50 millimeter plate right around the gun mantlet right there. But so let's take it out for a little ride because you know what? If this is the mouse killer, we gotta see that. So we've got all the modifications. We're gonna be able to take out the heat rounds and the Sabot rounds. So let's test drive this bad boy because I know you guys want to see it. And then we'll compare it to the Su-122P, the premium version, that's already in the game right now. But there is a mouse, and I do want to shoot at it. Alright, so let's see. Panzer IV running around. There's the mouse. So at distance, we're all red with that round. Now I think these are the Sabot rounds. Slight green. The cheeks are usually the weakest spot. It's a weird little green right there. All the shells look the same right now, and I think they're obviously going to fix that. So these are the heat rounds, I'm pretty sure. But I do imagine this to be the Mouse and Doom Turtle killer. It's got a great gun. We're at 700 meters right now, so at 500 meters was really where some of the rounds were kind of better served. You know, I think within 1 kilometer, but it's angled right now, so that's part of the issue. We got to get up close, face it head on. But you gotta get a feel for the speed of this thing in a non-road terrain situation, if you call it that. But this thing looks great, looks mean. I like it. I like the look of it a lot better. What's interesting is it's got a 14 point something millimeter machine gun. And it's got 2 of them, so you can see that one is coaxially mounted and one is on the top of the tank chassis here. Reload rate right there. Wow. We may have gotten the shells wrong. That should be a heat round. And there is angling due to this slope, but I wish you could return to the hangar, because they've got 6 different rounds. I don't know if you can customize them in test drive, because we may have just had the first 4 rounds. But regardless, you do get the point. Yeah, that's probably what we had. We had these 3 in the HE. I want that one, and yeah, just those 2 really. 122 millimeter gun, yeah, but we've got 14.5 millimeter machine guns, which is new to me. I've never seen 14.5 millimeter machine guns in the game. Those are heavier than the 12.7, obviously, 50 caliber machine guns, so bigger than 50 caliber machine guns. These things can do some serious damage. But we're gonna give that one more go. I feel like I messed it up somewhere. Okay, here we go. Alright, so we want the heats, and we want the APDSs, and that should be fine. So that explains it. Now we're going to get to see the true tank killing power of this just beast. SU-122-54, I believe 54 is probably for the date. Oh gosh. Yeah. It's all green, guys, these heat rounds. So the heat did pen. The angling, though, of this. If not, we'll have to move, but you get the idea. 750 kilometers out. This thing is perfectly angled, and we can shoot right through part of it with the heat rounds, so you're definitely going to want to arm heat rounds. That's the track, probably. So we're going to have to get closer and face it head on to truly test. But bigger than 50 caliber machine guns, what else were these things armed on? I think that's the first time I've ever seen them. And they're sub-cannon rounds. They're not 20 millimeters. So I think this is the biggest machine gun rounds in the game. I believe that the French fighter plane, what was it? I forget what it's called. Man, I played that thing so long ago. It has the smallest, and I think they're what, 7.5s, I believe, are the smallest MG rounds in the game. You know, rifle caliber basically, but even a smaller rifle caliber than the 7.62s or 7.92s. All right, Sabo round from the front. We're seeing green on the flat parts, and we're seeing green in the cheeks. Gun mantlet is yellow in certain parts where it's flat, but those cheeks are the weakest spot, but we already know that. It's still angled for us, so we'll move up a bit, kind of get more head on. But you can see that both these rounds are going to be very effective at dealing with the mouse and also the T-95. So you've got a nice yellow part on much of the lower glacis. Upper glacis, no. Gun manlet, some parts are yellow, I thought. And then the cheeks are green. Killed it right away because it just penned right through and got the ammunition in the back. I think we're looking at a mouse killer, guys. And as a result, also the T-95 killer. I think the T-95 is a mouse killer. The mouse is awesome. But the 37, or what? Not the 37. The mouse has two guns. 122 and what is it? 75? Been a while. I'm looking at the Russians. Where are you, my hearty? Yep, 75 and 120. The 75 should be able to deal with this little tank destroyer, but it's a bad, bad boy if you look at it. So here's the armor, not a whole lot going on. If you look at it visually, I like it a lot better than the SU-122. It's got better armor than SU-122P. Obviously, one's battle rating 8.0, one's 6.7, but they both have a 122mm gun. This one, however, is a D49 cannon, which allows it to shoot those amazing rounds. But anyway, there's also a couple of premium tanks in the game. We've got the SU-76M, premium SU-76M here. See the armor, all of that. Modifications. You can pause at any time you want to get a closer look, but it's got heat rounds, 80mm of penetration, really good penetration on this APCR round. But it is a battle rating 2.3 tier 2 tank. That thing gonna do pretty well then, I think, just like this one. Similar battle rating, similar tier, and by that I mean it's the same. Now moving downward, we have the T-34-85E. Now, when I first heard T-34-85E, I was pretty scared. I was like, spaced armor on this thing? Really? Holy crap. It's already a formidable tank. It's got the mobility of the T-34 and that fantastic 85mm gun. But the spacing is only 5mm of thickness, and it looks like it's just kind of like, almost like chain link, you know, kind of like a fence. So, and right here it's actually missing. I wonder why that is. Is that an oversight, or was it because of the light, maybe? Not really sure. But you can see it on the top, kind of on the back here, and on the sides and of the turret. And I believe what it's designed for is to kind of counteract Panzerschrecks and Panzerfaust, so shaped charges launched, you know, out of from infantry, which would be great to see some infantry in the game at some point. But I think that's what it is. So I think it's just mainly a premium T-34-85 with kind of superficial differences. I'm not sure how these will really affect heat rounds, if it would stop it, because it's only 5mm before. But maybe it would, so maybe it is effective against heat rounds. But I think predominantly right now, not too many people use heat rounds, with with exception of maybe that SU-122, the new one, and maybe the M103, just because they're so good at penetrating anything. You can hit, you know, mouses, I forget how the plural of it, from the sides and at different angles. But yeah, so that's the only one then. And then we've got an IS-2 Revenge. It's a premium IS-2. I don't think there's anything different. I think it's just a visual difference for the most part. I haven't. Oh, and then these tracks are different. So 30mm down there. 1, 2, 3, 4, covering up the lower glacis, which is a nice spot to aim for, one of the weaker spots. Although there's a nice little spot, but when you see from the front, you're going to have a bad time, but that's usually the spot, so it takes up a good 50 to 60% of that lower glacis, assuming it's not hidden by the terrain. But yeah, and compared to the IS-2, this one has a battle rating of 6.7. The stock IS-2 has a battle rating of 6.0. This is a mod 1944 D-25T, so it might just be an IS-2 mod 44. Revenge of the Hero Brother. So the Hero Brother may have fallen, and they are avenging him. But anyway, so that is pretty much all of the new armored vehicles, or so we know right now. Pretty exciting stuff, especially if these 4M or these GAZ-AAA trucks are soon to be evolved into armored cars. I would love that. But as far as new planes, we've got a number of new ones. We'll take a look at them. You can see that we have 5 in this bottom row IL-2s now. There's 2 new ones. There is the 1943 one, and you can see the tech tree here. You've got the IL-2 1941 at battle rating 2.7, IL-2 1942 at battle rating 3.0, the difference being just weaponry-wise. It goes from 2 20mm StuH cannons to 2 23mm YVA-23s. So from 20 to 23, neither of these have the rear gunner. Then you have the IL-2M, which goes battle rating 3.3, same 23mm guns. This time it's got a 12.7mm rear gunner with 450 rounds. The bomb load for the most part, let's take a look at modifications, can carry, looks up to 500 kilos of bombs, or 400 kilos of bombs and 8 82mm rockets. On the IL-2 1942, let's take a look. I'm pretty sure that the bomb loads, yeah, 4, pretty much. Difference being the 23mm StuHs. Here, the IL-2M 1943. We'll take a look at them. Whoop. That's not what I want to do. Modifications. Yep, pretty similar. Although this time you've got the rear gunner. Maybe some other performance comparisons like engines and whatnot, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm focused on weaponry. Then we have the IL-2 37. Now this basically goes from the 23mm cannons to 2 37mm cannons. So let's take a look, and it can carry only 200 kilos of bombs. So no rockets because it's got these gun pods on the bottom with the 37s. Let's take a look at those. Man, tell you what, and I'm going to show you the cockpit because there's a new cockpit for all the Illusion 2s. So 37mm gun pods, where the kind of rockets would be, can still carry 2 100 kilos, but now how much ammunition is in it? It's got 50 rounds per gun, so in theory you could knock out 25 armored vehicles or tanks if you were perfect in accuracy, but gives you a lot of firepower. And if you like that better than rockets or bombs, then that is your go-to. And then we have the IL-2M Type 3, where, let's take a look at this. We can carry the bigger rockets, the 132mm rockets, and 400 kilos of bombs. Maximum is 400 kilos of bombs. There are no 250 kilos available to the IL-2M Type 3, and it does have the rear gunner. So the 1941 and 1942 don't have the rear gunner. Now we're going to take out a little test drive. And I'm going to show you the armor, because there's some serious armor being packed on these Illusion 2s, man. They are not called the flying tanks for no reason. So what's kind of cool is you can now press I. For me, I also is turn off my engine, so I will have to remap this, because it will be kind of cool when you get shot in game to do the X-ray mode and see which components are damaged. I love how they moved that from the tanks, which I think was very, very well received, now into planes as well. But let's take a look at this cockpit. So it is a new cockpit, pretty beefy, well armored, not a whole lot of view in the back. If you're a simulator pilot, you got these kind of little windows here, and you can see the shoulders of your gunner there. But this is the cockpit. A lot of detail here. A lot of attention to detail. And what are those gauges for, if anyone knows? Anyway, so let's hear these 37s. Wow. Jammed the guns because I was firing too fast, but these things fire fast, man. But they're Russian 37s. So there is that. If you like Ilyushin 2s, this probably is you're going to be your favorite patch ever. And I think a lot of us do enjoy the Ilyushin 2s. Now there are a couple of other new planes. First of which is the Yak-9T and the Yak-9K got new models, so we'll take a look at them just visually. They look sleeker, a lot more, maybe more polygons, kind of more detailed. Some of the more iconic planes are getting more attention to detail. Armor, right? Oh yeah, that reminds me. 64mm thickness from the front there. We're going to take a look at the Ilyushin's armor because it's pretty interesting. So here's the 1941. Front plate being 64mm. From shooting from the rear, if you're trying to hit, you know, the pilot, it's 12mm. So when you shoot this way, if you don't hit these components, you're kind of not doing a whole lot. From the front, the 64 all the way around. Man, it's beefy, you know, like lots of armor pretty much everywhere. So that's the 1941. 1942, probably pretty similar. 64mm. For the most part, seems pretty similar. Then the IL-2M 1943. Now you get the gunner. Now I want to point this out. Now it makes sense, but if you're the gunner, you don't really feel appreciated because you've got this 4mm of thickness plate right here, whereas the pilot's like sitting really pretty. So I'm sure a lot of the Ilyushin aces and veteran pilots maybe have cycled through a decent amount of gunners in their time because they are very well protected. 64mm there, and pretty much the usual. And then the gunner only really has that 4mm plate, and then if they're firing from the front, obviously very well protected. Poor gunners, huh? Then the IL-2 37, similar. And then the IL-2M Type 3. Oh look, it got upgraded. Now we got 6mm thickness for that gunner in the back. But I found that kind of funny. But yeah, these obviously the pilots need to be very well protected because if they die, everybody dies and the plane dies too. But alright, so Yak-9T and Yak-9K got new models. Looks sleek. And there's a new Yak-9M. So if you like your Yak-9s, there's a modern version. Sitting at battle rating 3.0 right now. 220mm or 120mm StuH and 112.7. It's a premium, so if you like that grind, if you like to skip that grind, then I think this guy was new. I thought this Lavochkin 7 was new. Dolgushin. But yeah, let's take a look at the Yak, because you know what's different, right? It's got this custom skin. Tell you what, this guy did very, very good. He sure did. That is a lot of air victories right there. And now we'll take a look at the premium Lavochkin 7. This guy also did good. Now, the red and white, are those like fighters and bombers? Or what do you think? Not sure. Got some medals up here. And the tail section looks great, man. That looks awesome. I like it. Let's check the armor. 8.5, 66mm glass, 55mm glass, but it's angled. So sniping is going to be interesting. Pretty cool stuff how they put that in there. And let's see, do we got anything else? We saw the IL-2 cockpit, saw the new models. I believe that so far is pretty much, oh yeah, and then there's this premium IL-2M Avenger. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 IL-2s. You could have a whole lineup of IL-2s. I remember doing a StuH challenge. I might have to do an IL-2 challenge in arcade at some point once this patch drops. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the new Russians. We've got the GAZ-AAA truck, Su-57, T-34E, Su-122-54. We've got the 1943 IL-2 and the IL-2 with 37s. Then we also have a bunch of premiums. We have this Lavochkin 7, a Yak-9M, And for tanks, we've got the Guards Su-76, a T-34-85E, and an IS-2. So all around the Russians are looking pretty scary, pretty intimidating. But do you think that's as cool as the new British line? All of these carrier planes. And I'm going to show some of them off in detail soon. But, yeah. There's also some cockpits which are just freaking amazing. But I think the Russians did pretty good on this patch. But I think the British did better. Personally, they got a whole new line of planes. They're carrier-based aircraft from biplane to jet. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to pull the trigger on that like button. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Anything else that you want me to go into more detail on for patch 1.49. There's probably a lot of details I missed, so feel free to put them in the comment section below, where you're also putting, hey Baron, I'd like to see X, Y, or Z for patch 1.49, because I love your guys' feedback. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? I'll be seeing you soon.